we building our web applications? Many of our apps use the web and web browsers and so on. How do we deliver the code? How do we execute? And how do we deliver the data and so on? So in this talk, I'm going to talk about making the case for how we build our apps, trying to make the case that we should build it client first. So what does that mean, client first? Well, let me take you down kind of a history, down history lane a little bit. So as JavaScript was maturing and getting standardized around browsers, there was sort of this thing with two different movements. One of them was called Graceful Degradation. That's if a browser didn't support the latest features of JavaScript, your site should still work. But a much easier way was just to put some HTML out there and then enhance it with JavaScript later. So your site could become more dynamic after it actually rendered. So people's experience would be that you see something right away and as soon as possible, and then transparently the site comes alive, if you will. And this was considered the best practice and recommended by pretty much everybody from 2009, we see here. So here we've got progressive enhancement, how to use it. And on the other hand, I think this is Smashing Magazine. On the other hand, 2018, you have different coding boot camps that teach how to do this. And of course, it makes sense. We have HTML rendered, you got some CSS, something pops up on the screen, and then you add your JavaScript. Well, I'm going to say that now things are going to be a little different. So progressive enhancement was coined about 20 years ago, 17 years ago. And it's either that or graceful degradation. W3C also talks about the pros and cons of it. Yeah, before I talk about what I think will happen in the next 10 years, here is what it looks like. We probably all know this, right? We've got your title of the document. You may have some CSS, you have some HTML, and then right at the end, after everything's loaded and the browser has rendered it, your script can then be loaded, and you can defer your script or just put it at the end of the page or however you'd like to do it, and have it actually go to town. So essentially, what I'm going to show you is, here's how we dealt with it. So I worked, this was my startup, and basically how we deal with it at our company was this. You have PHP and you can render components. We started this before React, before Angular, so this was our own thing. You render some components and then you activate, in the JavaScript, you kind of just activate them. So, there's a bunch of stuff on the page, some elements have some metadata, or sometimes you call it micro formats, some information on how to activate this chat room, how to activate this or that thing. And then you would just do it. In our formulation, we called it tools. And tools were behaviors that you could add on any element. So in fact, you can add more than one behavior. You might have, for example, tabs, but also tabs showing items related to some other items. So there could be dynamic tabs that add and so on. So these behaviors would then be added to different elements. Also, on the front end, you want to, for example, react to things changing. So you had Angular, which essentially looks at your data and does dirty checking, decides how your data changed. Or you can have React, which looks at your view and tries to figure out how your view or your DOM changed. And afterwards, it makes some updates to the representation on the screen. But again, this representation is the final image. And underneath that, we started to look at data that's being fed into Angular, data that's being fed into React. And once you decouple that data, things become more interesting. So this is what we used to do, activate things and then run code after it's been activated.